So the plan, I actually planned this last time, so that's why we have a whole date here, 17th. What I'm going to cover is basics of MySQL. This is actually content I have taken from the reference I have given you earlier on web development, but mainly they focus on MySQL. You know that MySQL comes as a relational database system, whereas nowadays you have a choice of even go for the other types of databases like NoSQL and new SQL and so on. There are different choices. But when it comes to you know the databases, is still many preferred relational database system, because you have a the structured way of working with the database, right? Right, having said that, so in this one, what you see is a simple database. Actually, when you say a relational database, you should have several database, at least couple of tables together, and they should relate one another in some way, right? So usually you have to have at least one table, and then what you have is record and rows, right? And then you will have specific data. Now for example, in this example, we will see uh, we have about books, details about the books. Yes, we have author details, titles, type, and year. That information is there, right? Now if you want to have something in like this, right? There are many ways that actually you can create it. So how many of you are familiar with the command line? Are you familiar with the command line? Yes, Gihani, are you familiar with the command line interface given in MySQL? That means, do you know right how to put it this right? Okay, I don't have to do this then. So you know that if you already done this, you already know that you have to install either the MySQL database separately. This is a server type, or else you can use some other software package like XAMPP, where it will provide you the web server as well as MySQL and PHP support. They comes together. So, and then usually if you are going to um, enter as an admin, so we have the command MySQL -u root and -p, which is the user root, and then you provide the password. Okay, so that's how you start, right? Then when you look at the set of commands that you can use, and some of these are actually common to other databases as well. So these are the list of commands, like starting from creating a database, and then you can actually modify using alter. Then you can use insert to insert data, right? And then you can remove data by using delete. If you want to get the table structure, you can use describe, right? And then you can create different users, and you can give different access for the tables. Like you can allow some users to create databases, more privileged users, and also delete databases. And whereas in some case you can allow users to enter data only, so that could be a restrict using grant. Yes, we say you can provide user privileges, right? So you already, I hope you are familiar, and I hope you have already done this. And if you're not done any of this, please let me know, right? Okay, so if I look at the basics, you have to start with creating a database, and the statement is create database publications. In this particular case, let's say we are going to create a database to hold publication details. Now, once you create this, then you have to use it. You know, in MySQL, you can have usually multiple databases. Because of that, once you create a database, then you have to use it to create tables inside this. Now, the next couple of lines, what you see here is actually creating a table inside the publication database, right? So in this one, it says the table name is classics, and we have already seen the table structure here. We have author, title, type, and year, and we have different information we want to keep in this table. So you will see here, author is vacha, in we call variable character, and the length is given at 128. Title again vacha 128. Type is 16. Year is fixed character 4. So can somebody explain me what the difference between the vacha as well as cha here? Why they have considered vacha in author, title, and type, whereas for year you have specifically said it's character type, and then you put 4. Yes, you said you have already learned, right? Ajit?
Yes, sir.
Yes, can you tell us like the use of vacha and then cha here?
Uh, Vacha we use for characters.
Mm-hmm. And cha?
Uh, Cha. Really, I don't know.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's okay. That's why I'm here, right? Gihani, how about you? So sometimes I know that some of you know better than me. I know some of you are really developers, so I'm not a developer per se. I have used a bit. Yes, Gihani, can you help us?
So, if we know the specific length, we use char. If we don't know the specific length, we use vacha.
Okay, that's good. Good answer. Because variable character means it's variable. Now, for example, name, we don't know the number of characters, you have to put for an author's name, right? So because of that, we specify the length 128 so that the maximum number of characters you can say. But when you store, you use the whatever the length you need to store that particular set of characters. So it's called variable character. Whereas years, we know exactly we need 4 letters, four characters. So that's why it's char. Okay, good. Thanks, Gihan. Then we said engine InnoDB. Can somebody tell me why this engine part and what is InnoDB? Yes, Hasmi? Krish? Krish, can you help us to understand this part, engine and InnoDB part?
No idea, sir.
Okay, good.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
We are going to use InnoDB database engine
For this table.
yeah.
Yes, okay. So my question is, what is InnoDB? Yes, please. I mean, those who know, I mean, please, open up, share what you know about this with the class. We are not just here to, whatever I tell here, better to share your experience. I know some of you have already worked in the here, right? What is InnoDB then?
It's a default database used in MySQL.
Good point. Yes. Now, you know that the currently, I didn't remember the MySQL version. Is it 8? I think the now it's about version 8, but from version around 5 point something, the InnoDB was the default storage engine. Now, storage engine means the how exactly you are going to store and what features it offers. Now, I hope you already know about the transactions, isn't it? Ajit?
No clear ideas. I know that MariaDB used for that.
Okay, since you have mentioned Maria, let me tell about Maria as well. Earlier, before Oracle taken the MySQL, MySQL was open source, and then once Oracle acquires MySQL, we had, I think the community has some doubt whether this will be open source forever. So that's why MariaDB came out as another, a link for the same thing. So there are a lot of commands, although we say MySQL, most of the time when it comes to installations, you will get MariaDB. So whatever we discuss, most of the cases are very similar, except, few different, changes, because now these two develop, if I'm remember correct, is two different parties now, right? And when you say about the transactions, now transaction means, that when you are trying to do multiple things at the same time, like let's say you are trying to get some money out of your account through a ATM, right? Now let's say first of all you have to enter the amount you want to withdraw, right? And then there are multiple things happen, right? So first of all, it will check whether you have the enough balance, and then it has to subtract that particular amount from your account, and then they have to give out the money. But let's say, what if in the middle power goes off, there's an interruption, what will happen? Now let's say, now first of all, before they issue the money, right, they have to deduct that amount from your account. If the power goes off, what might happen if you're not properly done this, right? So what might happen, basically, that particular amount that you have requested may deduct from your account, but you will not receive the money. So transactions make sure that either when you have especially several steps, either all the steps are completed, right? Or else it will actually what we call rollback, or the intermediate operations, right? 0 and 1, it like either you are going to execute all the operations, otherwise no operations, right? Something like that. Make sure that whatever you do, the database will be in the consistent state. So ideally what we expect, if there's a power failure in the beginning, we need to start from the beginning, right? Because you have to start from the beginning, because you have not received the money. So we have to have like commit statement. If you have heard about commit, how many of you have used commit? Can some of you in the chat let me know how many of you are familiar with commit, rollback, the two terms? How about Sajini? Have you learned transactions? Maybe previously, have you heard about this? Have you used, not heard about, I know that you should heard about it. Have you used the commit and rollback statements when you write queries? How about Shashi? Shashi? Okay, so maybe then I'll discuss a little bit more on those when it comes in. So InnoDB is actually transaction friendly, or it will support transactions, whereas some other storage engines such as MyISM will not support these transactions. But if you want to have multiple users, especially when you design a web application, you know that multiple users can access your service at the same time. Now think about, you are going to take some item from some store, and let's say there's only one item. How you handle this situation? Yes, when multiple users are trying to purchase one item at the same time, see, you have to handle it very in a complex manner. So for that you need to have supports of locking table and also the transactions and so on. For InnoDB, actually the default storage engine will support this, right? And it says that you can support full text searches. I will come to this later on. Full text searches means you can search within the text, especially with when you have like with the field details. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So what you need to get from here is there's a purpose why we have this, and I will come to this later on in the coming one. I just checked whether you understand this. So there are a few engines as well, but this is the default, right? Okay. Now, once you create the table, it will create the table in the database. We call it publications. And if you want to check whether it has actually created correctly, we can say describe classics, right? Okay. Now the data types. I think, yeah, we have just discussed this. Now, for example, when you say character char in, we specify the length. Now, earlier, previously, we have seen 4. The number of bytes is used is exactly in. We mean earlier, previous one, for year, we have specified character 4, which means it uses 4 bytes, right? Got the point? Right. So likewise, when you say varchar, right? What happens if you use a varchar? It says up to n, not exactly n. Up to n means it depends on the number of, the letters in it, right? When you say variable character, varchar. So for example, when you say varchar 7, yes, there's no change of use 5 bytes for hello because it will be the same, right? But if you say varchar 100, even for goodbye, it uses 7 bytes. But if you say char, it will use the exact number of bytes. So that's the difference. If you want to save the space, especially if when you don't know exactly the size of the message or the string or characters you are going to store, then you should use varchar. Whereas if it is fixed, better to go for char, right? Likewise, there are other types as well, which might not very interested you, but you can put information binary data. So for example, we have char and varchar, we have binary and var binary and so on. Idea is the same, but there you use binary data. Okay, the number types, right? So how do you store numbers, right? Usually we talk about integer, especially when you want to store integer values. But if you just say integer, it uses 4 bytes. So if you have 4 bytes, you can see there are 2 values, signed and unsigned. Jesus, Jesutasan, can you tell me like what is the difference between the signed and unsigned? How about Callum? Maybe Callum can explain. No, it's okay. You can make a mistake, so nobody is going to laugh at you. It's okay. This is something you might familiar with other programming languages as well. For example, if you have already learned Java, you should know what is signed and unsigned means? Mati? Sachini? Yes, Callum put a message saying that in sign we can use negative numbers. Yes. When you say sign number, it supports both negative and positive. Yes. And unsigned is only positive numbers. There's no sign, unsigned means. Thanks, Callum. Right. Now, given 1 byte, the range for sign numbers is minus 128 to plus 127. Can one of you tell me why? How this value goes from minus 128 to plus 127? Shanika, can you help us on that? How we will get that range when you say 1 byte, the values goes from minus 128 to plus 126.
So altogether we have 255 numbers, that is range.
Yes, that's correct. Actually, you can have 256, right? When you have 1 byte means 8 bits. 256, it goes from unsigned case, it goes from 0 to 255. That's correct. But my question is, when it comes to signed numbers, why 100 minus 120 to plus 127?
Sign is holding both positive and negative values.
Okay, good. Then why it's not minus 127 to plus 127? Why it's minus 128?
No ideas.
Anyone in the class? It's okay. I know you know the answer. Maybe you are reluctant to say. Yes. So we know that 1 byte means 8 bits. So that means you have values from 8 zeros to goes up to 8 ones, right? So in the unsigned case, this will represent 0 and this will represent 255 unsigned. You know how to convert binary to a decimal. So how we get minus 128? Yes, how computer stored values when it comes to signed numbers. For example, how do you store how do you store negative numbers in computer?
First,
Yes, Sangamman, you are trying to say something.
yes. First bit used for sign, I
Okay.
mean one minus or plus.
Okay. So when it comes to sign numbers, the first bit is the sign. Okay. Yeah, your answer is correct. Go ahead. What is
Uh,
the representation? There's a name for that representation. I'm waiting for the name actually. Do you remember the name we have used for that?
no,
When you handle negative numbers? Two's complement, right? Have you heard the two's complement? I know definitely you know it, right? in 2's complement. So the sign numbers are represented as 2's complement numbers. So which means in 2's complement, what do you do? So the first bit is the negative number, or positive or negative sign number. We don't put it in that way, isn't it? But we know that it's a positive or negative, but you don't reserve it. Now, for example, this one, the starting value is 0. So that means this is a positive plus, and the value is 0. So what is the value in 2's complement when we have all ones? Yes, when you have all ones, what is the value?
minus 1 to 8.
Minus
1 to 8.
this represents.
Yeah.
No. How do you convert binary to 2's complement to decimal? First of all, you flip the bits, and we know that the value is negative, right? Then you flip the bits. When you flip the bits, you get 0, isn't it? And then you add it. So actually it's minus 1. So in 2's complement, right, this represents minus 1. You can actually refer what you have learned there, right? So today we are not going to talk about this, but I just want to highlight why we are getting this. So this is actually the representation of 2's complement, and we have 1 byte, meaning 8 bits, goes from 8 zeros to 8 ones. And when it comes to sign numbers, we are using 2's complement, and that means goes from 0 to minus 1. So that means it will go in the other way around, right? What do you mean by other way around? So 128 actually represent in 2's complement like this. So it will be like this. So this is minus, yes, minus. You flip the bits, then you get 7, yes, 127 plus 1, 128. So this is how minus 128 represent in 2's complement, right? But anyway, I hope now you understand what we have learned throughout the course. Maybe you can just figure out how exactly we are getting. So that's why we are getting larger numbers. Now you should be able to understand how we are getting this. So better you check the range of numbers you need, and depending on that, you have to select carefully, right? So you should not use all the time integer, because it uses 4 bytes all the time. And the range will be huge, right? You will see it's 10 to the power 9, right? Integer values, the maximum value. So it's huge actually. There's the range of numbers you can represent using integer is high. So which means depend on, the situation. If you can find out the number of, then you should do. Okay, right. Now, so likewise, floating point numbers, I hope you have already learned IEEE 754 format. So when it comes to float and real, usually that's what used to represent numbers, especially when it comes to, decimal point, right? Okay, so let's go to the database part of it. So let's say we want to create a table name, field, integer, and sign. So which means if you know exactly you need positive values, you can go for unsigned, or else you can just if you do not put this value, then we can make it, right? So you can sometimes put the brackets and the value. So this is actually for the display, right? The number of digits to display that width. And sometimes you can fill with zeros as well. For example, if you store 0, then it will display such as 0 0 0 0 with 4 zeros. Okay, so that about the numbers. Then if you look at the date and times, it's interesting. there are a couple of format supports MySQL. You can use date time if you want to represent both date and time information. Then date, timestamp, time, and year. Right? Make sure if you use year, you can use only either 4 zeros or 1901 to 2155. So that's why I hope you realize here we are using 4 characters, right? So you have to be very careful about the use of year here. So make sure you understand the limit of use year in as a data type, right? Now then, we will sometimes use auto increment, right? Now, for example, if you try to learn this alter table classics, which means we are trying to change, that's why alter, and add, meaning we are going to add a new column to the table classics. And this column is called ID. So add ID, and the type is integer unsigned. You know the range of numbers that you can represent, and you say not null, which means you have to provide some value. Null values are not allowed. And it says auto increment. Auto increment means it will keep on increasing. When you insert the data, you start with 1, 2, and so on. It will give you a automatically increased value. And then finally we specify this as a key attribute, right? um, so you know that uh, any table that you will create, you have to have a key attribute. So that's what specifies here. So what you have to get from here is basically auto increment. It will increase the count by 1 when you insert a new row. Right. So then you can, okay, so this is the explanation I already discussed. So if you want to, now what we have seen earlier is first you create this table with 4 fields, and then you add the ID column. Now let's see, you are adding ID column when you're creating the, right? When you're creating the table. So in this particular case, you will see create table classics, author, title, type, year, and ID is there. So all these, everything is here. We will say ID int unsigned, not null, auto increment key, and then we will say the engine. So sometimes you don't have to specify this, but if you're not really sure about the default storage engine, you better include this. So the next one is if you want to remove, let's say you want to remove a column, yes, you can just say old table, and then you can drop the ID. Right, now let's look at adding data to table. In this particular case, we will see the classics. If you are going to insert value for everything, you don't have to put the field names like this. But you see in our example, we have ID as well. But here we are not, adding ID, it's automatically created for us. So because of this reason, we are putting only author, title, type, and year. With saying insert into classics, then these are the fields. Then we specify the values in the same order, like Mark Twain is the author, The Adventure of Tom Sawyer is the title, type fiction, and year is, 1876. Right? So you will see that we are actually putting couple of lines. And once you do this, then we can display using select all from classics. So this is actually retrieval. uh, I hope you are familiar with select from, where, and from and where, these 3 blocks. Right. Now some other commands, especially when you alt, you can rename a table. What you have to do is you say alter table classics and use the keyword rename, and you give a new name for this. So what will happen? The table name classics actually change to pre 1900. Likewise, if you want to change the data type, Right now, you can say classics modify year small int. Earlier we have used character 4. So here we will actually change that char4 to, we are going to modify the small int. Likewise, if you add a new column pages, so in this particular case, we will add a new column here called pages. The data type is small int and it's unsigned. Renaming operations, renaming a column. So let's say we are going to change the table classics and change type. We call category. We will say varchar 16, right? Right now, if you go for this, we will not have anything. Column type to category. And then removing column. Let's say you want to remove the pages. We can say alter table classics. You can drop pages. So basically drop keyword used here to remove a column from this. Right. Okay, then deletions. Actually, this is to try out. Actually, all the commands, I think you better try out in a sequence, although I'm not going to, use it to show you since you are already familiar with this. If you follow all the commands, you should building a small data set from scratch, right? So in this last one, the set of commands actually shows you creating a table called disposable, and then you delete it. Now what will happen? There are 4 statements here. So create table disposable, which will create a table. And then when you say describe disposable, it will show you that, okay, that particular table with, one field. And then you drop it, drop table disposable, and then you are going to look at show tables. Right. Like adding primary keys. Now, as we have already seen earlier, when you create a table definition, you can add a key to it, or we can say primary key to it, because we need a unique key, especially when you work with the data, right? So that key we specify as a primary key. What you see here is actually you will, first of all, you have to add data for all the rows, because primary key should not be null. So because of that reason, we are adding ISBN for all the rows in the table classics, right? And then we will put the primary key, right? Finally, we will describe the classics. But if you are going to do from the beginning, this is how you may actually create. So this is a modification of all what we have done so far. We create the table classics, and then author, we specify title, category, year, and ISBN. Finally, we will say the primary key is ISBN. So that's how we will put up when you create the primary key. So when you're creating table, make sure that you identify appropriate data types, especially when you are submitting your script. What I will look at is whether you have used correct data, correct, data type. I will question why you have used it. I told you we will have a viva later on. So the questions I might ask you is why you chosen that particular data type, right? So you should know the answer. Okay. And then when you say primary key, I might ask you like why you have chosen that primary key, not the other one, right? So you should know why exactly you have chosen uh, the, the fields for primary keys as well as data types. Right. The next thing is indexes, right? There are different ways to search information, especially when it's a database. If you're not specify index, what might happen if you are trying to search some information in a table, it might start from the beginning to the end. What happens when you grow the size of the database, when the table is growing or getting large and large, it will take a lot of time to go through this data searching for some information. So because of that, for efficient searches, we should create indexes. But the problem with the indexes is, it's if it is too much index, if you provide, for example, you might think of creating index for all the fields, then it'll getting slow, especially when you're inserting new data. So because of that, you have to be very careful about the just choose of, indexes. Now, when it comes to indexes, there are a couple of different types. We call regular, indexes, primary key indexes, full text indexes. So it's based on the requirement, right? So you have to make a decision on, what columns you need to the index. Now, especially when you write queries, if you're using, particular, let's say, selection in where clause, then you might need to index it, right? So you can actually reduce this. Oh, Naman. Okay. So creating, adding indexes. So in this particular example, you will see adding index for all the fields, but practically you should not do this, especially if you're not using that particular field, because when you add the index, it'll get slow in the beginning when you insert the data, right? If you have too many indexes, it will slow down your database insertion. So you have to be very careful about creating indexes. But here what you note is, for example, author, then within bracket we have 20. That 20 means when you're indexing, consider only the first 20 characters. You know that what is, you have to sort and index in a way, but you don't have to consider, whole name, for example, right? And then that when it comes to category, you consider first 4 characters for the index, and finally for the year you don't have any limit for that, because we know that you have only 4 characters. So now if you summarize our table creation from beginning to the end so far, this is how it look like if you combine from beginning to the end. So you are creating the table classic, and then author is variable character, title variable character, category variable character, year small int, ISBN character 13 because it's fixed. And then you are creating indexes for the 4 fields here, and primary key you have selected as ISBN, right? And then you define the engine as InnoDB. Any questions up to this point, please? Right, now having said that, let me continue. Now, creating full indexes, especially when you have a text, search in text is quite slow, but full text search allows us to search really fast when you have a text. Now, especially let's say you want to search something about author and title. So then we can define a full text index, right? So in this particular case, this example, actually we are creating a table classics, we are changing. We are adding a full text to both author and title. So what happens here, basically it performs full text search, a really fast text on text, right? With this, pair of columns, both author and title. So you can actually, how do you check this is actually, if you have a very large, so if for a small data sets or small tables, you don't have to do this. But let's say you have millions of records, and if you perform a search on author and title, it will be really, really slow. You can see the difference now, right? So make sure that in those cases, you should use full text searches. Okay, next one is a foreign key. You know that relational tables, we know that the tables are related to each other. So how do you make that relation? We will have a common field, and that common field usually connects to the primary key of the other table, right? So the foreign key we call child table. Whatever the table that you are connecting is called called parent table, right? So let's see how we may create a foreign key here. Now let's look at these two tables. We have a person table. We have person ID, last name, first name, and age. And ode ID, ode name, and person ID. Right? Can one of you tell me, if you take these two tables, which one is the foreign key?
Person ID.
Person ID in which table?
Or in order table.
In order table, right? Good. Why this person ID? Why not this person ID? So that might be the question. I think you gave the correct answer, because this will, okay, so if you take the two tables separately, yes, we can define primary key here. So that primary key for this table would be person ID. Primary key for this would be order ID. And we know that to connect, to be a foreign key, that particular field should be common to both. So that means this is common and this is common. But only problem is only this one will connect to the other table's primary key. So that means the connection happens here, but not in the other direction, because this is not a primary key. So because of that reason, this is foreign key. So this key is a foreign key. We can say FK. Now this is how we will put the foreign key idea. Now when you're creating order table, we say order ID, it's integer, not null. Order number, integer, not null. And then we have person ID int. And we define primary key as order ID. We have defined it. Okay, foreign key, we will see that foreign key person ID, we are referencing the person ID, references person ID. So this person ID here will reference, person ID in the person table. So that's how we will define a foreign key. Now, why we have to define this? Somebody who already know databases, can you tell me? What is the use of a foreign key here?
To make the link for the both table.
Yes, one thing is linking both table. Now, for example, if I delete person number 3, what should happen to orders table?
The correspondence records must be deleted.
I think it's can't allowed to delete that particular record.
Exactly. Now I'm getting good answers. Good, good. This is exactly what you need. It depends on your design actually. So some may say that, okay, delete the orders. So if you delete the person, that whatever the orders placed by that person will remove from the system. Or maybe you will make it null, right? Or maybe you restrict it. So first of all, you have to remove the orders, then only you allow to delete that. Good, good. This is exactly what you have to think about when you're creating tables, right? So with the foreign key, then you will create a relation, and whenever you do updates or deletes, you have to decide what you should do. Otherwise, database will be inconsistent, isn't it? Right? So in this particular case, when you're actually deleting, you have to decide whether to make it null, whether to restrict, right? Whether to update. Isn't it? I hope those who already know, you know that we will say when you're updating, you will say make it a null, make it restrict, make it to cascade, we call it. When you delete, the relevant table rows also deleted. So that you have to specify, remember? So in the database application that you are developed, I focus on these places where I will look at the choice of foreign key. And then also I want you to think about what should happen when you insert data, when you update data, or when you delete data, right? Remember that. Okay, so that's about the foreign keys. Right, now the next one is querying. So far what we have discussed is the creation. Now let's see how you may retrieve data. So once you have data, and then once you populate your database, which means you create the data in the database, then the next one is you have to get back the data, what is stored data. So usually we will use select from where clause, right? So whenever we talk about this, this is normally what we will discuss. So we will always work on, 3 lines always. We will have select, from, yes, and where. So this is, the blocks that we will use usually, right? So for example, the simple one you will see here. Can one of you tell me what is the meaning of this line? First
Select
line,
the select author and title from the classics table.
which means we need all the authors and titles from the
Title from
table
the
classic. Yes,
yeah,
good. Right. And then the next one, anyone else? Angambana, can you tell me like what will happen in the second line? How about Krish?
Display all title and ISBN from classic table.
Exactly. So the second query, we want to get only the title and ISBN from the classics. Right. Third one here, count all.
Display the number of records from classic table.
Sorry?
Display the number of records in classic table.
Yes, number of records. So this count will tell us exactly how many rows in the table. It says count all. That means you are going to get the total number of records in the classic table. Right. Okay. The next one is actually use of, distinct keyword. Now, one of the issue in SQL is whenever you have duplicated data, when you retrieve something, let's say you retrieve author names, there could be duplicates, isn't it? So if you go back, let me go back to my data set. Yes, this is my data set. If I say select all author, what will be my output? How many records we will get? If you say select all.
records.
Yes. If we say select all, no, not select author from, let's say, classics. If I type this, how many records I will get?
5 records.
We will get 5 records.
Yeah.
Why this is? Because, this duplicates also, we will take, there's no duplicates as such.
There's no duplicates.
There's no duplicates. Maybe I will take type. Right here, we will say let's type. Select type from classics. How many records we will get?
5.
5 records.
Again 5, because duplicates are there when it comes to SQL. So if you want to remove duplicates, what should I do?
Distinct.
Yes.
Select distinct type.
Type from
classics.
So if you put the distinct keyword, what will happen?
Only three out.
Yes, it will omit any duplicate value. So make sure that depend on the situation, you have to think about this whenever there are duplicate value, and if it is not necessary, you should use distinct keyword there, right? Okay, so having said that, let me again go back where we have stopped. So this is what we have seen earlier, right? So in this one, we will say insert into classics. We will put some value, Charles Dickens again. So that means that we'll have duplicate value. So that's what here. And when you say distinct, it will be unique. Right. Next one. Removing the records. Now, for example, can one of you explain me what will happen in this line?
remove a particular line from the classics table. That's title. It's uh,
Little Dorrit.
Little
little
Dora,
row.
right? So this title, if it is there, you are going to remove from it.
That particular row.
Yeah. So you can narrow down the queries using the where clause. We already discussed you can have select from and where. And here you will see that, narrowing down the author and title from the classics. The first where clause we will limit to author Mark Twain. And the second one actually we will limit with ISBN. Then there are like some attributes like operator. So especially when you want to get similar values, Charles, and there are two names which started with the Charles, and the surnames were different. So if you want to retrieve that, you can put it like this. And then again, whatever you will have in the front, so you can for species. So in this case, we will put a percentage value here, and then we have the both side, we can put it like this. So similar matched values will be retrieved in these queries. Right, the next very interesting one, and I will expect this in your queries as well, limit. So what is limit? If you have already done, yes. Now, when you say select all from classics, what will happen? You get all the data, isn't it? Now, let's say you need the first 3 lines. Yes, then you should be able to specify using the limit keyword. Right? So remember that. So limit could be used to decide on how many rows you need. So especially this is useful when you're going to list out all the data in a table. You know that you are not going to show everything in the same screen. You are going to split the data. So when you split the data, you should not retrieve all the data at once. So better you use limit keyword, and then you limit the number of records you will take. Let's say 10 records at a time, and then you actually change this value so that you will get 10 records at a time and keep on displaying it. Right, then the match again when you especially have full text searches, I told you, like the fast searches based on even for multiple columns. So in this particular case, you will look at the oath and title with the end, so these values were there, and search whether that values are there in these two columns. So that is we call match and against. Okay, next, some changes, the updates. Now let's say update classic set author. We have changed. We are adding actually this part for the author name Mark Twain. So that means you are changing author from here to here. So that means you are updating value of the author. So likewise, if you want to change the category classics fiction to classic fiction, so this is how you may do this. Right. Then when you retrieve the data, you can use the order by when you can specify some kind of an order. Right. Now, for example, first one, can one of you explain me like what is the first line? Gihani? Callum? First line here. Okay, Suresh? So we are selecting author title from classics, and we will order by authors, which means ascending order. If you want to order in a descending order, then you have to include descending, DESC, to end of this statement. For example, the second line, we actually order author and title using the order by title in a descending order. Then now sometimes you can have the same author, isn't it? When you just say author is a similar author, put something, then you have to think about another column. So the third one, what happens there, you are actually getting author, title and year from classics, and then the order is based on the first on the author. And then if there are similar, then it's look at the second one, that means years, right? In a descending order. Right, then group by select category, count author from classics group by category. For each category, you are going to count the number of authors, right? In that particular category. So that's why we say count author. So then for each category, you will get a count of number of authors. Right. Okay, now let's look at, so far we have discussed, retrieving data, especially we focus only on one table. Now, we know already in relational databases, we have multiple tables, right? Multiple tables. So look at this example. We are creating a table for customers, including name and ISBN. And we have taken ISBN as the primary key. And then we have put, some customer details. And when you say select all from customers, you will get the values, right? In this particular case, you will get the value of 3 customers, right? So the same thing you could actually done one shot. Instead of these 3 separate insert links, you could have done like this. So this is also possible, just to show you that you can put, insert values one by one, or you can put everything together. Right. Okay. Now, can one of you tell me like what's happened here? Yes. So in this particular case, we have selecting name, author, title, and then we will combine both customers and classics. And how do you combine the two is using the ISBN number. So ISBN number common in both cases, and use that to combine the two. But if you have the same name, right? If you have the same name in columns, then you don't have to do this. So in this example, you will see select name, author, title from customers. We can say natural join classics. The assumption here is you will have the same column, right? So that's what you will see here. You will have the same column. So just you can say natural join. Or else you can specify the column by using join on. Now, for example, here we will have select name, author, title from customers. Then we can say join classics on customers. So this is the condition we have to use to combine the two tables. Right. Then the use of as. So in this particular case, it's actually used for the renaming. So we have name, author, title from customer, and we named at the classic as class, where then you want to match, you can use these renames. So you can actually shorten out, you can rename the one. Or else you can actually use to rename a column name, for example, select name, that name you are going to rename it as a customer, then from customers order by using customer. So that basically you need to remember this keyword is used for renaming it. Right. Okay. I think that's all I have for today's one. Basically, we discussed the basic idea behind uh, the MySQL, and then let's move on to the group work, where as a group you are trying to do a small assignment, a small work assigned to you. I want you to come up with you know data, SQL script, right, to get the data set. So let me first share the slides with you so that you have the slides. So let me stop the share and let me upload the slide into LMS. So I'm actually uploading this in the LMS.
Will
Finally,
do
you
the
can.
changes.
Ah,
Can I remove it?
remove means then where you are going to put?
No need. That table. It's like what you call what you mean.
What?
It's monitoring the user's activity. Likewise, it's